In this video, we're going to take a look at different formats for oral assessments in Lingua. This allows you to create presentations, conversations with AI, and IB-styled combined orals, assessing student speaking performance with rubric-based scoring and detailed analysis and feedback. Let's take a look at how this works. So for the oral assignment here, we have three different oral formats that you can choose from. The first one is presentation, which this was already covered in a previous video, but this is basically where you provide a prompt as well as an optional image, and the student will talk about it and produce their own speech, which will be graded against your rubric. But the two new formats are conversation and combined. So conversation is a more discussion-oriented format where the student will engage in question and answer with an AI character about the topic and discussion questions that you provide. And then the last option here is combined, which this is like IB style, where there's two sections. There's a presentation section where the student will respond to the stimulus, which is a prompt and or the image, and produce their own sort of analysis of the image and prompt. And then the second part, which is a conversation, which is a discussion of of their presentation as well as whatever topic or theme you want. So let's start by looking at the conversation format here. So you can choose between three different conversation styles. Rigid linear, which is where going strictly from question to question with no deviation or follow-ups. So it's a very rigid structure for the conversation. Natural structured, which is kind of there's a general structure with a sort of flow of the questions, but there's room for follow-ups or if the student wants to elaborate or deviate a little bit, but it'll still overall follow the same structure that you outline here. And then free unstructured, which these questions here are just suggestions, and the student can take the conversation in whichever direction they want. So for natural structured here, you can click these buttons here to decide for each question whether you want to spend more time or spend less time on that specific question. And for free unstructured, these indicate which questions are more or less important. And if you leave them blank, that just means it's a normal level of importance or time. So let's make an oral conversation assignment about discussing the environment. So over here, we can either write out the discussion questions or we can generate it with AI. So we see here, there's some questions here. We can change the order if we want. And we can also enhance it with AI, which will just improve these questions that we write in here, or expand with AI, which will add some more questions along these lines to continue the discussion. You can also enter in the expected duration, which is how long you expect the student to talk for. And then a max duration, which is like a strict cutoff for the student speaking time. And you can, as usual, you can enter in vocabulary, grammar. You can choose the rubric here. Let's choose this one. Grading approach, special grading instructions, and then now let's create the assignment. So over on the assignment page here, we see the discussion questions and then other details and the rubric. So now let's go take a look at it on the student side. So over on the student side, when starting the oral, the student can choose whether they want to talk to a male or female character. And let's start the conversation.
Hola, ¿cómo te va? Tengo curiosidad. ¿Cuál es tu parte favorita de la naturaleza? ¿Y por qué te gusta tanto?
Hola, mi parte favorita de la naturaleza es la variedad y la biodiversidad de la vida silvestre. Me gusta mucho las plantas y los animales.
¡Qué bien! Hay mucha vida por explorar. A veces las personas olvidan la importancia de cuidar la tierra. ¿Qué acciones pequeñas tú crees que son las más importantes?
Para mí, las acciones, lo más y hacer muchas otras cosas similares.
Es verdad, la contaminación es un gran problema. Bueno, ha sido un placer hablar contigo. Hasta luego.
Adios. So now that the oral has been completed, it will be submitted and automatically graded by the AI. So now that we've completed the oral, we can listen to the full recording of the oral again.
Hola, ¿cómo te va?
El proceso. And then we can see the student's transcript with their full conversation with the character. And then, as usual, we can see the per category grading against the rubric, as well as the markup for how the student did in that category. And then we can open up the rubric and see how they scored against each of these categories in the rubric. And then, as usual, we see skill points, strengths, and improvements. Over on the teacher's side, in submissions here, we can see that same stuff as well over here. And we can also see performance insights, which is how students did across all these different categories, and generate the analysis here, and also overall insights. So now let's take a look at the last oral format, which is combined. So combined is basically a two-part oral where the first part is a presentation, which is a response based on the prompt and the image, and then the second part is the conversation section, which is a Q&A with the AI character. So this is designed to simulate an IB oral, which has those two parts, and with the second part here, asking questions about what the student said in the presentation, as well as transitioning to another theme to talk about that. So let's take a look at how we can use this combined oral format to design an IB style oral for the students. So let's first enter in the topic, and then we're going to enter in the prompt here. And then I'm going to upload an image. So the student will be tasked with describing this image, giving a personal connection, a connection to a Spanish-speaking country, and then also explaining the global significance. So this is what IB typically asks. Let's enter in an expected duration of 3 minutes, a max duration of 4 minutes, and preparation time, which this is how much time the student gets to look at the prompt and image beforehand, plan out their response. And if you enable notes, then also take notes that they can look at while speaking. So now for the conversation portion, we're going to do natural structured, and then we're going to add this question here. So this is telling the AI to ask the student about something they said in the presentation portion, or ask them to elaborate more on it if they didn't explain it enough. And then the second one is going to be ask them about something else they mentioned that they should elaborate on more. And then the last one here is switch to a completely different topic, connected to a different IB theme, and then do a discussion about this topic and also respond to any questions the student asks them. And then we're going to spend more time on this question because this is a little bit of a bigger task here. And then say 5 minutes, max duration 6 minutes. And then we're going to use the IB combined rubric here. So if you want to just look at this for a second, this is what that looks like here. So it's the full IB rubric here. So here's the details page for this assignment here. You can see part 1, here's a photo they'll be describing. Then part 2, here are the questions they'll be responding to, with this one having more time spent on it. And then the rubric. So let's look at it from the student's view. So I've also enabled Quetzalita over here so you can see what role it plays. So if you want to enable that, you can. Basically, that just helps the student plan out and organize their thoughts before they start speaking, but it doesn't actually guide them at all during the oral itself. So that might be a useful tool. And then they're going to have 2 minutes of prep time. So let's choose this one. Hola, en esta foto hay un robot que está en una fábrica. Estos robots están muy los robots como un compañía en Colombia. So now we're going to click End Presentation. And then now the student will be directed to the next portion, which is the conversation portion.
Hola John, qué bien tu presentación. Mencionaste que usas técnicas de inteligencia artificial. ¿Podrías darme un ejemplo concreto de cómo haces eso?
Sí, hola. Entonces, yo uso la inteligencia artificial para desarrollar nuevas tecnologías. Por ejemplo, una aplicación que he creado que se llama Lingua, que es la inteligencia artificial es muy relevante para mí.
Entiendo perfectamente. Qué interesante aplicación. Ahora quiero cambiar un poco de tema. ¿Me podrías decir si en tu comunidad o en tu país hay tradiciones o costumbres que están cambiando con el paso del tiempo? ¿Qué piensas sobre esos cambios?
Sí, creo que hay mucho cambio para conservar a la naturaleza y cuidar para la vida silvestre.
Es muy valioso lo que dices. Bueno, ha sido un placer hablar contigo. Hasta luego.
Adiós. So, so now that we've completed both parts of the assignment, we can see our grading over here, and we can see the full audio in que son of both the presentation part and the conversation part.
¿O negativos para...
And then we can see the transcript, what the student said in their presentation, and then, of course, the conversation here. And then we can see how the student performed across each of these categories, and then also the markup over here, and the full rubric here, and which mark bands the student scored in here. So as you've seen, oral assessments are a very powerful tool within Lingua for oral presentations, conversations, and full IB-style oral assessments to give your students the speaking practice they need, assess their oral skills, and provide them useful comprehensive feedback, and prepare them adequately for their real oral exams. Thanks for watching.